Let's move along. Long ball number two. You hinted at it a little bit, but after 7 weeks, I think it's time to check in on our coaching hot seat in Major League Soccer. There's a couple big names that have underperformed so far, but you have the number one hot seat coach. Who is that?
It is Troy Lesesne of DC United, and I hate to say it because I like Troy Lesesne. I am a fan of his. I talked to him a bit when he was in New Mexico as head coach of New Mexico United. He obviously left that job. What was frustrating, I think, for American soccer observers when we watched the path that Troy Lesesne took to get to where he is that he felt he needed to give up a head coaching job in New Mexico and become an assistant in New York in order to get an opportunity to coach at a place like DC United. Obviously, he was the interim head coach in New York when there was a firing there. And now, this is not all on him. It's 3 losses in a row. Obviously, it's the 6-1 just absolute destruction that they took in San Jose. We're going to talk about Joseph Martinez later in the show. He got a hat trick in that game. When you see a team sort of give up that way, man, it's really hard to argue that the coach needs to stick around, even if you can point to the roster and say it's not good enough. And it's not. It's not good enough. And I feel bad for Christian Benteke. Right? We were saying, like, who do you feel worse? Bernadeschi has not been the effort problem in Toronto, so you feel bad for him. Insigne, you can feel bad. You don't have to feel bad for Insigne.
I'm still like beside myself at Insigne's performance, to be honest.
Yeah, that Insigne he is not the guy, right? But Bernadeschi is. But I think it's really Christian Benteke that we should most feel sorry for, because the guy is one of the best goal scorers in Major League Soccer. And he plays for that team, which just cannot get out of its own way. Cannot figure out a way to score goals, cannot figure out giving up 6. San Jose's decent this year. They've obviously made progress under Bruce Arena, but that's not Miami. You lose 6-1. I don't care if it's on the road or not. People are going to be asking about the job. Now, Lesesne is number 1. It gets real tricky to figure out who might be number 2 on this list because, look, Phil Neville's been under some heat in Portland. And I do think there's an argument that Phil Neville might be somewhere in the general discussion right
Jason
now.
Christ,
Portland.
Perhaps?
Jason Christ. Where is Jason Christ, the head coach?
Oh, my apologies. I might be misremembering, but who's in the seat in New England these days?
That's Caleb Porter. Caleb Porter could be involved in this conversation too. And they did lose to Cincinnati. So, yes, absolutely Caleb Porter. 4 points from 6 games. Lesesne and Porter in the Eastern Conference, that's 100% true. Out west, though, if we're gonna move on from teams that haven't had success in a long time, and that's DC and New England, maybe we talk about teams that have had success but are underperforming relative to their expectation. Now, I think for the most part, we've decided that it's not Greg Vanney's fault. Right? This is Ricky Puig going down. This is the turnover in the roster. Joveljic scored twice in the weekend to help Kansas City. Wouldn't LA love to have Dejan Joveljic again? It's not his fault. And yet you have to wonder if there's at least some inkling that maybe, because I'm a reasonable person, I think, and I want to go, oh, well, this circumstance and that circumstance. But this is a winning business. This is a results-based business. And we need to get to a point in Major League Soccer where teams are thinking, this isn't good enough. Now, maybe you could call it rash or ridiculous, although the Galaxy do have a history of firing a guy who was in first place because they fired Siggy Smid way back in the early days of the league when that team was in first place simply because of a disconnect with the ownership and the leadership there. I don't think that's going to happen to Vanney. I don't think he's going to get fired. I really don't. But his name has to be kind of in the mix because of where the Galaxy are right now. They have not won a game. They have 2 points from 7 matches. And they got taken apart by Diego Luna and RSL this weekend 2-0.
Do you think that he'll just get the patience just like until Ricky Puig comes back?
In a league where winning a championship is more difficult than it might be if you could just outspend anybody, like in the Premier League or some of these other places, probably. I think it would be rash, but there may be a time when it's so embarrassing for the leadership of the Galaxy that you're kind of like, well, wait a second. Maybe we just need to show that we care about this season, because right now it looks like you're punting on this season. And again, that might not be your fault. Will Kuntz built the team that won the championship. He didn't suddenly become a bad general manager. And yet here everybody is kind of getting slimed. And you can't do that on television. It just happens. You're in the way. And then I would say this is going to be relatively controversial too because of what he's accomplished. But relative to expectations, are the Sounders where they want to be? 6 points from 7 matches?
Yeah, there's a lot made of him having the deepest team in the league, and it hasn't shown at all so far in the early goings of the season. Seattle has a history of, warming up as the season goes along. It's a long season. We've got to keep that in mind, but we are 7/34 the way through, and it hasn't looked very bright out there.
Now, look, injuries are always a thing you take into consideration, right? We're gonna give Greg Vanney some patience because of Ricky Puig's long-term injury, and he can't do anything about him. He's not coming back this season. Brian Spencer lost Paul Arriola, who they traded to Dallas for, who I don't think he wasn't going to be the guy that made them a playoff team or a championship contender. He was the guy who was going to raise their level a little bit, and depth was a major part of why you bring in Paul Arriola, and he's done. Injures that knee in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And then Jordan Morris now has a hamstring injury, so he was unavailable for this game, right? So they're sort of starting. They're sort of having to deal with injuries pretty early. And again, I guess you give them a little bit of patience there, but they still have Giamar Gomez Andrade. They still have Jackson Reagan. They still have Nuhu. The Roldan brothers are still there. Obed Vargas is still there. These guys all started against San Diego, who took them apart 3-0. And San Diego's the real deal. We all agreed on that. We 100% bought in on San Diego FC. Mikey Veras and his team have put together something that is not just kind of like, oh, we're new and nobody understands us and we can beat them because we surprised them, a la St. Louis. This looks like a much more sort of complete effort in San Diego. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here for Seattle, and I like Brian Smetzer. Again, a guy I've talked to many, many times over the years. But we are now, 8 years into his tenure? This is his 9th season, I believe. Well, he started in 2016. He picked up for it in 2016 when Siggy got fired and won a championship that year. You wonder, are the Sounders willing to make that kind of change?
That Chucky Lozano goal against Seattle was pretty impressive. That was a beautiful ball from the right to his run, and he's got a burst still because Lozano was able to definitely thrust past the center back of Seattle there and get that finish. But I mean, we saw a huge titan of Major League Soccer coaching go down last week, so perhaps there is no untouchables in the coaching ranks. Obviously, the dip in form isn't quite as extreme as it was in Kansas City, but okay, there isn't any untouchables.
So I say yes and no to that. I mean, clearly Peter Vermes getting fired means that guys that are sort of the furniture and our institutions can be fired. And I think you would put Brian Smetzer into that category after his run nearly a decade in Seattle. Obviously, the difference is that it's been a while since Sporting had real success or really felt like a contender where they made a Western Conference semifinal a couple years ago. While Seattle went to a conference final last year and lost to L.A., right? They maybe shouldn't have lost to that LA team in that moment, but they did. And but here we are. It's what have you done for me lately? It's like, what have you done for me now? And obviously, when we've been talking so much pro-rel on this show because of what the USL intends to do, you really wonder about that part of it, how that changes the calculation for these clubs who are now thinking not just we're not having the season we want. Oh, no, this stinks. And we need to show the fans what we still care, and therefore we make a change. Or we think a different message is going to help get more out of this team. It's, if we don't perform, we get pulled into a relegation zone. Now, I think that's going to be a while before the USL has that sort of environment because they might not relegate for a couple seasons and all of that. And it's not a thing in MLS, right? It's not a thing in MLS that clubs have to worry about being pulled into a relegation zone. So even though the Galaxy are horrible, there is always this notion of, you just get hot for a couple months and you make the playoffs, and Greg Vanney is the right guy for that. Or in Seattle, again, you're underperforming your talent, but still, we can finish 9th and make the playoffs, and who knows, maybe we'll be ready to win a championship then. And I get that sucks. It feels like rewarding mediocrity. And that's where we are with MLS.
Yeah, LA Galaxy 2 points from 7 games remaining winless in the Eastern Conference. 2 teams remain without a win, and that is Montreal, who's already fired their coach, and Toronto. They are 0-3-4, getting a point last night against Miami. Just one final quick thought. Is the Toronto coach in any sort of danger of losing his job?
I can't think so. That was a hard reboot. I mean, I know, again, Insigne and Bernardeschi are still there. Jonathan Osorio's still there. But that's a hard reboot. And I just think you have to give Robin Fraser a lot more time to figure this out because they were bad and obviously churned through Bob Bradley and John Herdman. And if you fired Fraser now, I just think you hurt yourself rather than improving your chances of getting good enough to be a contender.